Please join me in welcoming Dark Waters to the stage. Producer and actor Mark Ruffalo, producer Pam Koffler, and producer Christine Vachon.
Thank you.
All right. It's a real pleasure to be in conversation with everyone here today because this film was finished on October 21st. And we were just so blown away by this film directed by Todd Haynes and this kind of new take on an old genre of the whistleblower film. In the tradition of All the President's Men and Silkwood, and just all these stories of power that's gone awry. In this particular story, we're looking at Rob Ballot and his tenacious unpacking and addressing what happened in the suit with DuPont. So, it's going to open on November 22nd in selected cities and then expand November 28th. The film Dark Waters is based on a 2016 New York Times article called "The Lawyer Who Became DuPont's Worst Nightmare." Mark, can you tell us about kind of your history of activism and how it intersected in finding this story and making this story?
Sure. So I got into activism during the second Iraq War, and I got pretty involved in it in the peace movement. And shortly after that, I wanted my family to take a break, so we moved to upstate New York and landed right in the middle of the front lines of the fracking gas lands. And then it became more personal. I was part of a frontline community that was fighting fossil fuel extraction. And really dug in on that issue and started to feel like how important water was in sort of bringing us together. The one thing that I knew about my neighbors is they wanted clean water just as badly as I did, whether they had leased their land to fracking or not. And the only thing that was really standing in the way of them not leasing their land was the misinformation that fracking didn't harm their water. And so it became imperative that I got that kind of information out. Anyway, this movie's about water. It was a way that I saw I can use filmmaking to support and to intersection with my activism in a time where we're so divided. I really wanted a way to broach those divides, and I feel like storytelling is the best way to do that. And so after the 2016 election, I really was making it a conscious decision to try and find projects that did that.
So you read the New York Times Magazine article. What was the next journey as a producer to bring it to Todd and to Killer? So
I read it, and I started, I was in a bidding war against Participant. And Robert Kessler called me up and he said, hey, we just had this great experience working on Spotlight. Would you like to join forces on this? And I said, yes, that sounds good. I don't want to be bidding against you. And you know what that's like. And we got it. And I reached out to Rob Ballot before we closed it.
Tell him who Rob is.
Rob Ballot is the man that the story was about. He was a lawyer who was working for Taft Law Firm, which is one of the biggest corporate defense attorney groups in the world. And it's his life story. and he breaks this case. And I wanted to know, I felt like there was something missing from the original story at Taft, some conflict that was happening that really wasn't in the article. I felt like it was really soft-soaped in the article, but I felt like it was essential to really have that conflict to tell this story in the way it needed to be told. So I called Rob, and I said, hey, man, are you financially sound that you can go to war with Taft if you have to? And his wife chimed up, we'll tell you everything if you get the rights. And yeah, and he did. But the question was who to direct it. First, we worked on a script, and it was a very straightforward whistleblower script. You know, it was a very genre script. You guys saw it, and I really wanted to do something different with it, and I really wanted it to get into character more. It was very story-driven, and so, you know, I was racking my brain, like, who's kind of a little bit off-center for this kind of thing that can bring something new to the genre, and of course, I thought of Todd, and because his characters have something similar, there's this like alienation within this kind of oppressive system and this kind of unspoken depth that each one of them have that maybe is not quite on the surface but so deeply lived in. And
yeah, I was really touched by the nuances in not only Rob's character, but also his wife, who I think is really, it's shown her as an attorney herself, but who's become a homemaker, the role that she plays through this very lengthy process. Pam and Christine, I believe you mentioned like the script arrived, but it took a moment before actually everybody came on board. Can you talk about the collaborative nature that ensued with conceiving and manifesting this film?
Well, I'll start. And, you know, when it first came to us, I think Todd was super excited at the idea of working with Mark, but also he does have, you know, he loves genre of all kinds, and he was a big fan of exactly the movies Mark mentioned, the whistleblower genre, which does have its own little genre to itself. And I think when he first read the script, that what he wanted to do is exactly what Mark spoke about, is figure out ways to deepen it and really understand why, since for most whistleblowers, once they actually cross that line, their lives get worse, not better. And at some point, living with what you know has to get worse than upending your life. And it's a specific kind of complicated person that manifests that. And I think that's what Todd really wanted to bring to the script as well.
And I would say just one of the things Todd would say in all the meetings with department heads and in the creative process is one core idea is what happens to the person who goes up against power. And you know, if you were to boil down an idea, I think that's really in the film, because Rob Bellot is that character, but Wilbur Tennant is also that character. And there, Wilbur is sort of one of the instigating characters that starts the story in motion, who is also in his own way, very differently from Rob, confronting the limitations of the individual fighting powerful forces. So just from a creative perspective, I think that is where we wanted the script to get kind of more deeper, is the people in the fight against enormously powerful institutions. What is the price they pay?
You know, it's so timely for this film to be coming out now. Is there a playbook in this film that maybe could be applied to whistleblowers on the national stage?
It's worth it. It's worth it to blow the whistle, but that, you know, their lives are different because of it, for
Well,
sure.
the David and Goliath aspect of it, I think is actually quite appealing, because we, as little people, sometimes don't think that we have the ability to create this kind of change against these large power structures.
But we do. I think it always starts there. And I think what's remarkable about Rob is he's not your typical hero. He's a very modest guy, and we really went for that in it. He's not a hero because we want to be him. He's a hero because we don't. It's a really lonely journey, and in a culture where everything's telling you to go for the money, the career, the car, the bigger house. This guy takes another journey in the midst of all that, right at the beginning of all that. He's just made partner, and he takes another journey, which was spiritual in nature, and it's one that's driven by justice, and that's what we have to celebrate today, because there's something so much more fulfilling in that for him. Even though it's difficult, you could see it's his destiny, it's his calling, and that's what kept him going even as it became difficult.
Yeah, I think the interiority of the character that you're able to explore really adds a beautiful emotional dimension to a whistleblower story that you think has certain beats, but it becomes a much deeper journey. I know that you started shooting on January 14th, 2019, Cincinnati, a place that Killer has made 5 films or 4 other films before. I want to actually insert a question from the audience, which is from Lindsay. The question is, tackling films inspired by true events always adds an extra challenge. How was your team successful? What hardships did you face? Cincinnati in the bitter cold. Schedule of your talent. What parts of the process would you keep? And would you do anything differently? That's for all of you.
I mean, Killer is no stranger to true life stories. We were known for more than one. I think there's certainly a sense of responsibility, especially, Rob was on our set most of the time, right?
That's right.
Really, he was around, and when he wasn't there was often Todd saying, call Rob to find out, if he stacked his legal pads on top of each other or if he spread them out on the desk. But seriously, those sort of questions, which lent a kind of, an authenticity to the process, which I think was really important to everybody.
In terms of challenges, winter in Cincinnati was definitely one of them, just pragmatically.
It never ended.
I think we, in retrospect, looked back, and every single time we were exterior, we maybe couldn't go to our exterior sets and had to go to cover set. Deep freeze. I think we all learned there's a new rule, which is you can't work outside under a certain temperature, and you have to go to cover just for cold. We shot on a real farm, and there were all sorts of challenges with that, but I do think it lent some rigor to the storytelling, being up against the elements.
I would say also in the developing of the script, the one thing I think we've done really nicely is to center on community, or at least have the community have a voice and have fleshed out characters in it. And those are real people, and that's really their life. And, balancing that and making sure that that's honest. And, we actually use the community in the movie. And that could be really scary for a production, I think.
How so? How are they used?
Well, the thing about these kinds of, when you're in a community that's fighting on this level, eventually a lot of infighting starts to happen as well. And so it's hard to keep the community together because they're under so much stress. And it lasted so long. We're talking 17 years. And so people expect things to happen quicker. They want justice sooner. They want justice more fully. They want to see people hung. And you could understand why. But you have a lot of voices and a lot of really strong feelings and opinions. And Todd just did this beautiful job with Killer and our writer, Mario Carrere, of making sure that all of those disparate viewpoints and opinions were honored in a way that they could all come into the picture and all feel taken care of. And that's a remarkable feat in this kind of space. People living under this kind of pressure.
You know, that actually leads, thanks for the soft lob, to my next question, which is about the visual vocabulary that was established with this film. And can you all speak about the kind of conversations and contributions, particularly from Hannah Beechler, your production designer, who I know her work from Black Panther and Fruitvale Station, and Ed Lockman as the DP, kind of how their contribution to the vocabulary of the film.
Well, I'll start a little bit with Ed, just that, you know, the challenge for him and for Todd was to take a film that takes place largely in conference rooms, offices, you know, suburban living rooms, and make that visually stunning, which they absolutely did.
And these are real life locations with the office, right?
The office, it was the real Taft offices. I mean, as you said, this was the 5th time we shot in Cincinnati. It was the only time that we didn't have to hide Cincinnati, you know? So it was kind of great to be able to be like, there's Fountain Square, you know, that's okay. But yes, a lot of the locations were, you know, at least some of them were the real locations.
And Hannah, you know, she came in to meet just generally with me and Christine. I think you were there. And she is from Cincinnati, and she grew up on a farm. And I know, I think what she and Todd really found in their language together was just an extraordinary level of detail and authenticity, and really, you know, dignifying all the spaces, that it wasn't just Taft Law Firm and it wasn't just courtrooms, it was the farm and the farmhouse, and it was the Kiger's home and the churches, to just provide a lot of texture and authenticity and dignity to the people who were the victims of what was going on, not just Rob's world, but to toggle between these two realities. She came in with this incredible presentation of photographs and references, which is how Todd likes to work. He always has this incredible lookbook that telegraphs to everyone, this is the look and feel of what I'm going for, and sticks to it.
And wasn't she campaigning at the same time?
Yeah, she won.
Yeah. So how do you balance? How did she balance? How did the team balance her campaigning for her incredible win for Black Panther and being in Cincinnati and sounds like boot camp to get this done?
Yeah, you know, there's the flight on Friday night, and there's the Sunday flight back, which she did a number of times.
And an amazing crew, too.
Yeah, right.
They just jumped in whenever they needed to.
So this film, I think, is a beginning of a conversation that you don't want to end when it finishes. Mark, can you speak to the call to action and, you know, kind of what people can do after seeing this film?
So, I mean, one of the great things about working with Participant is that they don't just kind of leave you with the film. That, you know, there's a big advocacy campaign that, to me, is as important as any other part of all of this. And so there's a website, www.foreverchemicals.com, and from there we've created a coalition of all of the communities in the United States that are fighting against PFOA. I mean, just to give you an example, in California, the Environmental Working Group just found that 70 water districts in California are polluted with PFOA, and that's 7 million people's drinking water. And they just found out about it like 2 weeks ago. This is happening throughout the entire United States. It's all over the world. There's a world movement growing. We just met with some of our contemporaries in Europe about advocacy and how we're gonna deal with this. And so out of foreverchemicals.com, there will be several campaigns going on, legislative, on federal legislation, local legislation, state legislation, which is actually much more effective than federal on these issues, and getting materials and social media might to the frontline communities who are doing this for nothing. They're fighting for their lives, and they stretch $1 into $10,000. And so the more we can support them, the better and quicker and more efficiently these problems will be dealt with. But it's global, and we all have it in us. We all have PFOA in us, and it builds in us, and there's no way of getting rid of it. And that's why it's called a forever chemical.
And Lisa, you sort of led with the quip that we finished the movie October 22nd, and it's going to be released a month later. And Christine and I were sort of in the weeds of the finishing of the movie, and like, what if we need more time? We got to let the movie have its time. And we were reminded there's no time because people need to know the story. And it was really profound to think about a narrative. We're used to making our films and leading with their stories, but this also has this layer of relevance to humanity that really played into the experience. So just wanted to
Absolutely. The clock is ticking. It's actually picking up speed. I was so excited that I got to see this, and I would ask everyone here to see and spread the word, and November 22nd to turn out. Please join me in thanking Pam, Christine, and Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, they bring me out here for the sad news.